My name's James Heimlich. If you're wondering, hey, I think I know you from somewhere, it could be I'm president of Thomas Park and Avondale Neighborhood Association. I'm with 812. I work with them. These are all volunteer things. And I'm a minister at First Baptist Church here downtown. And see, what else am I doing? I'm usually I'm president of the Christian Ministries Board for that as well. So you may have seen me here and there, but for this purpose, I am Muncie's Historic Preservation Officer. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is and my role in that, and I'll introduce things a little bit more. But today my topic is historic preservation. It's an intersecting pathways of addressing community, economy, housing, and poverty. And you may not think about all these issues that are very separate, and we have little spheres that we talk about, but historic preservation is kind of at an intersection of all of these. And so we'll explore that today. So again, I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for Muncie. I was appointed by the mayor. I do receive a small stipend for that, but if you add it up, it's basically worth a meeting a month and a little bit, maybe an hour extra each month for that. So it is a small stipend, but I'm glad to do it. But professionally, I have 24 years of experience as an archaeologist, as an historian. I work for a private firm. I work here out of Muncie. My company's around Kokomo, Indiana, and I go to where the projects are. Actually, I have a project here in Muncie that I'm doing, so that's very local and nice with the levees that I'm working with. But I do Section 106 compliance work. We're what we call a cultural resource management, which is above ground historic structures and buried below ground archaeological sites. Those are cultural resources. And my line of work is management of those. So Section 106 is when federal money is involved with a road or a new development, HUD, which is my role as Historic Preservation Officer. I deal with HUD funds and the Section 106 if there needs to be any of that. Section 106 just means if there's federal dollars used, it cannot knowingly harm any historic cultural resources. They have to be taken into account. And then there's this long, complicated process that very few people understand. I don't know that I understand it. I've just done it for 24 years, and I can kind of navigate my way around it. But that's primarily what I do. And then NEPA is with that, with the environmental focus, which cultural is part of environmental under that. And then I have a niche as being the main historic dam documenter for history and archaeology in Indiana and now probably the Midwest. I've been working with documenting historic lowhead dams and then systematically removing them because they're either a danger, they're in the process of breaching, or for environmental reasons would like to open up the waterway. So that's part of what I do. And I serve part-time as the Historic Preservation Officer, full-time, like I said, historian, archaeologist. You as citizens here of Muncie, you're very fortunate to have someone with the background and experience doing this job that has been voluntary for quite a while. Because it's hard to put any real effort into something that you can only spend a portion of your time into when you're a volunteer. If it were your job, you could spend a lot of time and a lot of effort. So I'm thankful for everyone that came before me and all the effort they have done. I'm lucky that I'm supported already from my full-time job that I can put in time and resources and passion in continuing what I do, but here for the city of Muncie. So we're going to talk about historic preservation and the Rehabilitation Commission, Historic Preservation Officer, my role, community, economy, housing, and poverty, and then some conclusions. So, some people in here have seen a little bit of this, and some of you know more about it because you're on it. But the Historic Preservation and Rehabilitation Commission, anyone heard of that? So it's one of your commissions here in Muncie. It's not, one that people talk about a lot, but it's a very important process and role for our community. It is set apart as being an official city commission. It meets every third Thursday of the month at Cornerstone, at 5 p.m. It is open to the public, those meetings. You're welcome to come. Come and ask some questions, and that would shake us up a little bit. That would be great. But we have a commission that meets there. The members are appointed by the mayor for 4-year terms. If people have an interest or a background with historic structures or just history here with our community, you can be one of those people that can be appointed. So you can let our commission know of your interests. Historic Preservation Officer serves on it, and the commission has oversight over our local districts and landmarks. Well, what does that mean? Not every historic property in Muncie has oversight by the commission. It has to be locally designated within our ordinance. We have one local district, Heimlich District. Have you heard of that one? Good. So that's our one district that we have. We can have others, but we have one. That means that it has been agreed upon by the homeowners and, I don't know if there we go, and the city that those properties are going to conform to a certain standard of what the historic presence of those properties are, what the neighborhood looks like, and if they make any alterations, they'll be approved through a process called a certificate of appropriateness, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But it means that for the most part, that district will not change a whole lot because that's the intent. It means we won't lose homes that are historic and valuable. We won't lose that history, which is valuable to Muncie. And we will still keep that presence and feeling of that historic district when it was created to now. It should still feel somewhat similar to that time. And we do that for various reasons that we'll get into. Historic landmarks are individual properties, and there are several, well, not several, there are numerous ones in the city that are on this registry, that are under this ordinance, that they too, if they are going to make any changes, have to go through this process so that we keep the feel and look of these important resources. Now, I have some concerns from my time being here, just looking from my background and seeing what is done. My first concern for any kind of commission, if it has any kind of teeth to it, if it's going to do anything in your city, it's got to have a budget. There's no budget. What's it going to do? Well, a lot of times we sit around and talk about properties. It's not really engaging and doing everything that it could do, especially if we were supported by a budget. We have no current plans outside of the purview of looking over these, the local district and the local landmarks. We could be doing some other things. We could be looking at some other districts. We could be, and we can, that's not saying we don't. We're just really sort of maintaining this list in the ordinances. We don't have a budget, and we don't really have a plan that's going farther than that. There is a general plan, but there's not a lot of actionable items that we've really have started discussing yet. I would like to encourage the commission to start looking at a plan and some actionable items of we can do more, but we've got to be supported by a budget in order to do that. Because the commission, other than myself, they're all volunteers. And so again, you can't ask a whole lot from volunteers. They're not getting paid to do all this. And if you've never seen a Historic Preservation Rehabilitation Commission meeting or been to one, then you're already speaking to there's not much glory in the fact that you're on this commission. So it's out of a personal passion and interest that people are volunteering their time. And meetings often have a focus on infractions within the Heimlich district or a local landmark. When somebody is doing some work, most of the time because they don't understand that they're supposed to do something, although Tom can tell you there are times where they know they're supposed to follow a process and they don't. Then we have to talk about that and say, what are we going to do? Do we need to address it? Do we talk to them? There are fines that could be levied, and then remind them of this process that they're supposed to be doing. So most of that monthly meeting, that's what we're really focused on. Not always. This is just general. My role is Historic Preservation Officer. So I oversee the Certificate of Appropriateness. That means I'm a liaison between the district, the homeowner or the local landmark or the property that's in the district and help them get a COA to the commission. I'm kind of the go-between, but I'm also the official face of historic Muncie for them and then for just everybody. So part of my role is a liaison between just the landmarks in the city, but also I'm an advocate for our cultural resources here in Muncie, and hopefully speaking on behalf of everyone's love of our history. Also, I am an official liaison of Muncie as a certified local government. That's what Muncie is with the state. That means we get to kind of fast forward through some of the bureaucracy when HUD funds and other federal funds for grants and things are happening, that I can oversee some of that process to make things go very quickly and working with the state. Following all the guidelines, but this is an official path for cities that have a historic preservation officer, they have a commission, and they have a commitment and a plan for historic preservation. I also sit on the Historic Preservation Rehabilitation Commission, and I'm under the Community Development Department. So my current concerns is my role, what I've seen since I started last October. There's no salary or real set stipend for a qualified person to hold this position. When I am no longer able to do it, or if the mayor or the city doesn't want me to do it, when I step down, who's next? And who's going to be an advocate? Well, if we don't have a set salary or a stipend that is going to get somebody qualified to come in, that concerns me. So my job, in part, is to advocate for a budget for the commission and for this position, even if it's not for me right now, but for later, so that it's set up better than what I found it. There's no budget, and there's little guidance for the role and duties other than what the ordinance says. I need to attend a meeting. I'm supposed to take notes and make sure that all that's documented, and then I just hand off the COAs to the commission, plus I give some of my input on it. But there's not a lot that's really written there. Now, I've seen a lot in my roles, and I would like to do more and flush this out, because it's for the improvement of our city. So that's the role kind of historic preservation. But we're going to talk now what these spheres of influence around that I think historic preservation really touches on all of them. And the first one's community. So we're going to talk about some statistics, community development, and a sense of community. If you haven't seen these are 2022 census. We have about 65,000 population. We're down less than 1%. We've lost some population, but it's not great, a great loss. The average age is 29. There's the ethnicities. It's not too much of a surprise if you walk around Muncie, that distribution. Now, community development. So specifically talking about community development department, which I fall under, their main goals are through housing funds or grant funds through HUD, Housing and Urban Development, federal. They have community development block grants, home investment partnership programs, and the intent is to develop and revitalize viable urban communities. So some of you may have been involved. Well, I know the land bank's probably been involved with some of these funds, or at least with the community development department, with HUD funds for community development block grants, which can really go to help for building and development. A lot of times it's with the focus of housing, low income, or just housing in general. But that's kind of the role of the city in community development. That's kind of a formal process. Well, there's more to community than just the formal process. We have a sense of community. So a neighborhood, and then even our city, can struggle with an identity, a sense of community. History is and can be a solidifier of identity. So within a neighborhood specifically, you can kind of have a historic identity. And developing that will help with that sense of community. So if you're in the Emily-Kimbrough district, and it looks like it's from the 1800s, and you have an 1800s house, and you have known history, and you have some historic plaques, and you have access to some literature about it, it starts to form a sense of community that if you live there, you belong to this thing that was part of this time period, and that you're focused on keeping that feel and setting. So it can give a sense of community and identity. And it doesn't have to be as formal as a local district. It can just be like in Thomas Park, Avondale, around the Ross Center. Anyone familiar with the Ross Center? It used to be a horse track. How many knew that? Yeah. It used to be a horse track. It was a farm, and the farmer had an oval that he would race his horses on, and then it became an actual race. And there are still 2 round intersections, ovalish intersections, roads that you can see. So next time you're around the Ross Center, look around, and if you can find those. One, unfortunately, was destroyed with the soccer field that was put in, but there are still 2 that you can see. Yeah, that you can see there. That was the actual horse track, and they paved over it. Well, there's a sense of community there. I've been talking with the Ross Center about, hey, what if we put up a health trail, just a multi-use trail that mimics the route of that horse trail, and put up some signs and some images of what the horse track was and the property back then, and people around there would identify this used to be the old horse track, and then you could use it. You get a sense of community. It happens very naturally when you have some history to kind of draw in, and most of us like to be attached to some history. And through a unity of design in a neighborhood like we talked about, or through a commonly understood history, we can get that sense. So we have a sense of community also with heritage tourism. Anyone ever heard that phrase before? So it's becoming a very, we'll talk a little bit about this with economy, it's becoming a very lucrative field for cities. If you have unique history, people tend to want to come and see that, participate in that in some manner. And so tourism for your cultural things, heritage, starts to promote that through trails, through signs, through events. There's all kinds of things. Cultural trails, just as I was mentioning, like that horse track, could be a cultural trail. It could be a multi-use bike, walking, health, fitness for the Ross Center, but it's also a historic cultural trail that would educate and inform people of that history. You can have local landmarks and districts that we talked about. Historic markers, those little placard signs that are throughout that tell you something happened here. Historic preservation and education, of course, is a critical part of developing community. So one of my concerns for our community development is there's kind of a lack of holistic coordination and planning among city agencies towards community development. There's a lot of different departments, and I don't feel like there's a lot of larger conversation about how do we deal with historic preservation, but then with a sense of community, economy, poverty, housing, and that's kind of the general theme of this talk, is there needs to be more discussion and more collaboration. Not just within the city, but then within all these partners and entities around here doing the work. We should have a plan that harmonizes because nobody has infinite resources, so we should be doing the best we can with them. And then my biggest concern is always demolition over preservation and rehabilitation. Every time we lose a historic property, it's gone forever. It can't be brought back. We can do some things, we can put up a plaque, we can put up some literature, we can educate people, we can put a part of it in a museum, but we lose the structure and its history and its context forever. And so the best thing that we can do is try to promote rehabilitation of buildings before we go to demolition. Sometimes things get too far, and you can't. But could we have conversations before they go too far? Certainly. In fact, I've been working with the building commissioner to have those conversations of before we destroy things, let's have a discussion. If they're starting to get of a concern, let's be aware of it before. Economy. So every organization has to be funded somehow. The city isn't going to do just everything it does without the idea or hope of having some sort of economic benefit down the road. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to talk about statistics, development, and some growth through preservation. So here are some 2022 census statistics on our economy. So 1.3 employment growth to 30,000 employees. This is it from 2022 census. Healthcare and social assistance, retail, trade, and educational services are the largest industries in Muncie. Maybe that's not a surprise, especially health and education. Retail surprised me. I didn't realize that it was as large as it was. But then manufacturing, which Muncie was known for historically, it is increasing, but it's at 9.85%. Our median income for Muncie is $40,309. The unemployment rate I have here is from 4.4% in January to June from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 5.5. So unemployment is growing, unfortunately, through 2024. And that speaks to our economy. Economic development. Well, we have a Muncie Economic Development Department, includes Redevelopment Commission, residential programs, Economic Development Commission, and Industrial Revolving Loan Fund. They assist with business development, abandoned properties, residential programs, tax abatements, entrepreneurial startups, live-work areas, and federal grants. Has anyone ever been to any of those commission meetings or dealt with them? Any of these? I went to the Redevelopment Commission not too long ago, and it was interesting to see their commission. From what I have learned and been a part of, some of my concerns are with the redevelopment is our way of doing business in Muncie is to hold on to abandoned properties and then bundle them as leverage for new development. That's a thing that happens. It's okay. My concern is, do we have a plan that harmonizes with other things that are of importance? I do not feel like we have that yet. So, of course, the land bank is doing their thing. Does that harmonize always with them? I don't know because I'm not in it. Does it harmonize with historic preservation efforts? No. That I can speak to. It does not. Because a lot of these abandoned properties are historic, or were historic, and they've been abandoned, and then they're being bundled up because they need that leverage to move forward with this development. It's a process that is necessary, but could we do it better? Because some of the new development would then put infilling into places that it wouldn't really fit. So if you were to put the most modern looking house in the Old West End in an empty lot, that's not great for the Old West End. The look and feel of what that neighborhood is, or promote its efforts of what it's trying to do as a neighborhood. So there's a lack of greater plan for rehabilitation. Again, rehabilitation over demolition. Rehabilitation, I will promote over new development. New development is necessary, but rehabilitation is the preferred so we don't lose that historic resource. And we're going to talk about that it's more than just a historic resource. There's a lack of a greater plan for new development with this infilling, this fitting into neighborhoods. So, what does this mean with historic preservation then? Well, this is from Donovan Ripkema, his findings. It was presented in South Carolina. It's about a broader research on historic preservation and economy. If you invest money in historic preservation, statistically, you will receive more money as a city for that investment than what you put in. Statistically. Always? No. Those of you who have a historic property and you put your own money into it, you may not see that return other than the value of what you value of the historic presence, what it's doing, you're keeping up with an image, whatever it is that you feel like it's worth. It may not be that you're getting actual money. There are historic tax credits that the state, frankly, could do better with. The city can do some things with that I would like to approach about it. But there are economic benefits. For every 100 jobs in new construction, this finding shows 135 preservation jobs are created. So more jobs when preserving than when newly creating. 9% of job growth occurs in regular parts of the city, where 40% job growth typically happens in historic districts. Historic districts are a huge economic advantage to cities, big if they're invested in. If the city is invested in time and resources with it and promotes them, and if the neighborhoods are investing in promoting the districts as well. It has to be a cooperation, but a historic district is a massive economic value to a city. Heritage tourism brings greater value and economic value. Historic districts statistically result in higher property values, which means higher property tax. It also means less foreclosures happen in historic districts than generally. And historic districts statistically promote job growth, startups, and small business, way more than just the rest of a city would comprise. Housing. Here's what you're particularly interested in. So some statistics that you're probably familiar with, our current system, and then historic preservation with that. So I said the median income is $40,309. Median property value, according to these statistics, 2022 U.S. Census, $88,000. 40.7% have home ownership in Muncie. 26.6 thousand households. But there's a 70.8% home ownership rate in Indiana. I'm not a mathematician, but one's higher than the other, right? There's a huge disparity with Muncie's home ownership and the state's home ownership. And we're going to get into what the result of that is then. And we should be asking these questions. Why? Why is that? Well, we need to have discussions about that. Here's our current system. July 2024 shows we have 357 houses roughly on the market, up 22%. July 2024 shows 108 sold, and that's up. It's a seller's market. That's what this means right now. People are selling things are going well. The average rent rate, $871 to $1,425 a month. How many people own? 40%. What are the rest doing? Annual increase for Muncie is 76% raise of rent for a studio, 29% for a bedroom, 45% for a two-bedroom rental. These rates keep going up because this is going to talk about the next thing we're going to talk about, poverty. Muncie's rent is higher than Fishers and Noblesville. Anyone know that? I didn't know that until I was looking this up. On average, not every situation. Well, we are a college town, and rentals are high. That's part of it. Hamilton County, though, they're doing pretty well.
Do the ownership rates in other college towns like in Bloomington and Lafayette and Terre Haute look similar to this?
That would be an interesting study. I have not looked at it. There's probably similarity there.
It's low, I've looked.
At least similar,
lower
yeah.
than the state average, but higher than Muncie.
Okay. Yeah. And this is not my expertise. So I'm just putting together some statistics and talking about then historic preservation, but these are good questions to ask. And that's the thing. I can bring an element to this discussion, and some of you can bring elements to this discussion, but we need to have a large discussion with all those elements because housing's an issue. Yeah.
Just curious, why do you think that rents are higher here in Muncie than places like Hamilton County?
Probably twofold. One, they can, because renters or landlords can raise the rent and people are going to pay it. So you only have an economy of what people will pay for. So they're especially college students, they're paying for it. And then the second thing is that there's a shortage, and so they can get more money for it, and they know it, and people are, which feeds into that. So not just that people will pay it, but people need to pay it because they're looking for places to stay. But then I do think a college town is just higher generally, but these rates just keep going up. Some of it's inflation, some of it is the cost of everything is going up, but 70, 80, 40, that's a lot. And most of us could not cover an increase of 40% or more for whatever it is we pay for our housing, mortgage or rental. So, how about looking at housing through preservation? Historic districts statistically contain denser housing. So there's more housing in historic neighborhoods because it's before some of the ordinances and they're kind of packed in there. You ever see those homes that you could reach out a window and borrow some sugar from the neighbor in their window? They're tight, some of them. Well, you have more housing. More housing, that's good. More people can live in housing then. So that helps with the housing issues. Historic properties are often lower income properties or rentals. We're going to get into that. Preservation and rehabilitation over demolition retains housing stock. If you tear down a house, that's one less house. Or several less rentals, because it could be within a house. Yeah.
Yeah, the house is historic. So one of the things, like in the Old West End, that I've noticed is if there are houses that get taken and put into like 4 or 6 or 8
Yep.
units, and then the landlord just sucks all the rent out of it until the house falls apart, and then you're down
Yep.
a house. Can historic preservation designation prevent people from chopping up a house into a bunch of units and running into the ground, or is that?
Yes. So the National Register of Historic Places, if you have a property on that listing at a federal level, any federal dollars coming in on a project near that or on that property has to take into account the history of that property. It will not prohibit that, what you're asking. A local designated landmark or district can, because it will be part of whatever is created through that process. These homes need to look as they are, and we all agree to this, and any changes of them, like putting 4 exterior staircases on it to access different parts of the upper part, no, it wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen. The federal qualification for a National Historic Preservation Register gives some protection, but not a lot. It's the local that really matters. And I would advocate that we should do more with that. The Old West End is the obvious next choice to be a local designated landmark or district, if there's enough people that would want to do that within the district. It cannot be compelled. It has to be voluntary of the homeowners that they would agree to that designation. And there's been efforts in the past to start that. It just never has happened fully. But if you wanted to keep the Old West End in a certain way, that's the path forward. Anything else, any property owner can do what they want with their property within reason. And that's something that we covet, that right of property, and to develop it as we wish. But that's one avenue towards it.
Going along with that.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the Old West End, like I think it would be difficult to get everyone to agree, but as far as having more local historic landmarks, which have the similar protections, like
Yes.
kind of one-offs,
Yes.
what's the potential of that?
Oh, definitely. That's just working with the landowner and then working with the Historic Preservation Rehabilitation Commission and getting that agreement in place, and then it has to go through a formal approval by the city because it goes in as a part of that ordinance, that they're added to the list.
And what's like the percentage? Is there like a percentage of people that have to agree to do the local historic district, or how does that work?
I know for National Register it's 51%, but Tom, could you?
Every owner in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it probably around that?
It's like the majority of the
Yeah.
property owners have to, have to sign the petition in favor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how. But yes, a local like Cornerstone, I've been talking to, they're interested, and so we're going to talk about that process. And then it doesn't take anyone else, the owner of Cornerstone, that property can say, yeah, we're interested in being a local landmark, and so then we can go through that process. It's not guaranteed, but there's a process for that. Yeah.
So, the Old West End and East Central both have a lot of land, or vacant lots, or otherwise
Yeah.
dilapidated properties. Does having a historic preservation designation dictate what's gonna happen on those lots. Like if we had a development project going on in one of these neighborhoods, and someone wanted to put up like a, you know, big ugly thing.
Yeah.
Would they be, do they have to go through like a design review in order
Yes.
to develop on vacant lots?
Yeah, so with Emily Kimbrough, yes, you would have to do that. And I don't know, Tom's on that board or whatever, you're part of it, so you could speak to it.
Yeah, so we have guidelines for the Emily Kimbrough district, and within those guidelines cover both changes to existing properties and infill. But I'll be honest that the infill requirements are very minimal and vague. But basically, there is something in those guidelines that would, you know, and any new infill that would be built would have to be respectful of the existing context. So there's certain things in there about heights and setbacks and, you know, et cetera. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty, it could be better.
And
One
then-
more question about that, what is the mechanism for enforcement? If someone comes in and starts to build something that doesn't fit, you go to the building commissioner? How do you make sure that someone does that? Buy the property for the-
So technically that falls to the historic preservation officer then, to then notify that person to stop what they're doing, and then we can issue fines up to a couple $1,000s per infraction. So we have a little bit of bite to it, especially for a smaller developer. A large one, it's not that much money. And that happens. But also then we can work through some civil processes with that, with the city, hopefully to stop it. I would like to work on, in my capacity, for all the neighborhoods in Muncie to have some sort of a guide for the city to use. If the city is responsible for developing anything, that it generally adheres to these styles of homes in these areas in specific, so that they don't just stand out and look bad, even if it's not on the National Register or a local, that you don't have something that just really, really takes away from what the whole neighborhood is. So that's something I'm trying to work on, but again, I don't know how it can be compelled to do that, but at least to inform the city that there are better practices. Yep.
Let me ask you, I get that there's guidelines that you have to follow in the neighborhood. But when a person buys their house that you guys don't own or pay, don't you think those guidelines are a little too steep for someone that owns their house? Don't you think that's like,
So that's a good question, because it's not just a one-time conversation. This has been a conversation for a long time. Because if you were to buy a house in the Emily Kimbrough district, and it is on a local registered, a local historic district for the city of Muncie, you would be required to make sure that you are compliant to the norms of that and the regulations. The problem is that you may not know that when you buy it. And so not all of that information is listed on deeds, and that's a problem. It needs to be listed on every deed, a local landmark or a district, those properties, and it's not there. And under certain laws, I don't know why it's not there, but the city can't just do that. So I don't know the answer to that, but it is a real problem that some people buy properties and they don't know what they're getting into, because it is limiting. It'd be equivalent of going into an HOA that you buy, but you would know that you're buying into an HOA, and you have to, make sure your trash is out this way and it looks that way, and your lawn's always this way, and all that stuff. But this is in a historic context. It's not fair. So for my part of it as historic preservation officer, my first job is to inform. So if there's any issues, I want to inform, not fine. And then see what can we do to fix the problem, and then work with that person to help. Because that's not fair. Why would you be fined or have this burden on you when you didn't know? And so I'm trying to be a liaison and work with people for that. Part of what I'm doing, and hopefully soon, I'll be sending out a letter to every single resident in Emily Kimbrough District and every owner of a landmark, local landmark, introducing who I am, and your property is on this list, and you fall under these rules, see these resources, including myself and our commission. So I'm trying to educate that way. But 10 years from now, when that house is sold and that person isn't there, that letter may not be given, that information might not be passed on.
So would that be something they have to, as an owner, have added to the deed, that information?
I don't know enough about, yeah. Go ahead, Tom. I don't know enough about really.
Prior to my time on the commission, my understanding was that there was discussion about the commission going through the process of having that designation added to all the deeds of all the properties that apply, but it was going to cost something like $75,000 or something to go through all the paperwork associated with having it added to 150 deeds, and so it was like it was a budgetary issue.
Sure.
But my understanding is that that's something that could happen.
Okay.
We could have all the deeds rewritten so that we would add that to all of the homeowners' deeds. Because currently it doesn't exist. The only place that it currently exists is in Beacon JS system. If you go in and click on your property, it will tell you that your property falls within the historic district. But
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So somebody might not know if they bought a house unless they get a letter from.
Yeah. But that is something that if we had a budget as a commission, we could at least start doing some, and in time, all of them would be done. So that's a possibility. But a great point. I wish I had a better answer, because the answer is yes, you're still held to those standards, and yes, it's not fair, especially if you don't know. Yep. No. Well, then you'll applaud me for a lot of things. I don't know. But yes, that's something we need to address. And that's something that's on my list of things we should definitely address. So the last area is poverty then. And we're talking about housing. Well, poverty is part of this. How does historic preservation fit in? But we're going to talk a little statistics first. There's 30.4% of Muncie's population that lives below poverty line. That's 17.8 thousand people. 12.6% is the Indiana poverty rate. 30 compared to 12. Median income, we said already, but in Indiana it's 66,785. The largest ethnic group in Muncie are white persons, but they also make up the largest poverty, those living under poverty line. 240 to 200, excuse me, that should be 280. 240 to 280 homeless in 2024, according to the Hub's resources, here in Muncie. And 4,398 in Indiana. And sorry for the typo, it's 240 to 280. And it could be more, that's just the numbers that I was able to pull off. Part of the problem, the conversation, I did not have easy access to even find out what this is. Why? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, because of what you talked about at the beginning, the city doesn't want to pay for your office to have the staff to compile statistics showing what.
Sure, I'm sure some of it is definitely one, appearance. Nobody likes to highlight the worst things. But it's how are we going to deal with anything if we don't at least have an understanding of where we are? And we are considerably in a different situation statistically than the rest of Indiana. We have a lot of poverty, and then we have a good chunk of unhoused people. Our current system, those living under poverty, there can be government support, there's services, there's help from others. In my neighborhood, Thomas Park, Avondale, a lot of the neighbors help each other, especially when services don't cover everything. You have a close-knit community there of just helpers, people that just help each other. And I've seen that with other communities as well. But a lot of times it's left to our own accord, and our small community. Neil here does a lot dealing with that, helping people get resources in Thomas Park, Avondale. We have charitable organizations that help with food and utilities and rent. We have Christian Ministries, Muncie Mission, YWCA that have emergency shelters for those that are unhoused. Citywide, though, we're having conversations. We're starting with some processes. The continuum of care is a great start to addressing a lot of these issues. Historic districts and properties are often the lowest affordable housing options. Within 3 generations, what was a mansion becomes one of the most affordable properties in a city, statistically. Abandoned historic properties are often occupied by the homeless. Historic preservation correlates with poverty. I think this is a powerful image here. So this is the GIS layer. I know it's not very defined. I pulled out on purpose. But all of these represent districts, historic properties, landmarks. The center of Muncie and down here and then over here is where most of those are. Can you see that? Now let's look at low income places in Muncie. The red is the highest area of low income. The center, the side, over here, what does that correlate to? A lot of it's historic properties. Now, both of these you can access these online. You can zoom in and get all of this information. This is through the ArcGIS. This is Muncie's historic preservation map. And then this was, I think, just the neighborhoods map that you can do to show income or other things, population, whatever. I think that speaks for itself where it shows. Where's low income in Muncie? Historic areas. Not all. Neil and I will point out this area where we live and other parts of the South Side, very much low income as well. But off of that, there's a lot of historic sites there, but they are not known and labeled. And it's been a terrible injustice to that neighborhood for Muncie not to formally survey those historic areas. That's on my to-do list of something we need to correct. Not just that area, there's other areas, but there's a huge gap. Look on the south side. What's represented? Not a lot. And there are historic properties of significant importance there that we need to do. But that's another conversation. Go ahead.
This is exactly why the city should have got in bed with land bank. That red shows way more than the others.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's so hard for
Yeah.
the city to join with them. Okay, I'm done.
Sometimes a map just tells you a lot.
But that, I'm telling you now, nothing is really getting done in those areas.
Yeah.
I live in that area.
Yeah.
Neil lives in that area. So nothing is getting done. And yes, Nate has been doing everything he
Yeah.
can to save those areas.
Yeah.
Is there historic funding to help some of those homeowners that are in that high poverty area to bring their homes up?
Not that I'm aware of. Something I would like to do, I've already mentioned it, this is unofficial, there's been no agreement, but I have mentioned it to the administration of the city that it would be in the best interest of the city to come up with some source of funding for historic preservation so that we, one, could preserve and rehabilitate, but also help those who are trying to do that so that we could offer some grants, that we could start addressing issues where we have underrepresented areas of their history. I'm volunteering most of my time to do all this, and I'm glad to do it, but at some point I won't be able to, and I don't know if the next person will be in a position that I'm in to be able to do it.
I'm part of industry neighborhood.
Yep.
We had a second wave of ARP money.
Mhm.
Do you know we had well over 100 applicants just to help their outside, the exterior of their house? And we couldn't
Yeah.
accommodate everyone. So
Yeah.
that speaks volumes itself.
Yes. Yeah. So here are my conclusions, and then I don't know if Nate has more after this or if we want to do some questions, but historic preservation is at the center for our understanding of community, economy, housing, and poverty. And so if you haven't thought about that holistically, I hope this has helped you kind of bring all that together historic preservation's at that intersection. And that hopefully the city of Muncie and others will collaborate more to start having holistic conversations about these issues that aren't just housing, because it involves poverty. It isn't just housing because it involves economy. It isn't just housing because it's a sense of community and development. And it's not just housing because a lot of these are historic places as well, and we need to deal with those. And running people out of an abandoned historic property doesn't solve the whole problem. It addresses one symptom, and we need to have conversations that are deeper than that. And there needs to be a holistic plan and approach. And that's my goal, is to get people to the table that we can say, hey, we need to talk about this, and have a plan for the city in certain areas, working with partners in those areas so that they have a plan that works for them. And then the city supports that. So again, my name is James Heimlich. I am your Historic Preservation Officer. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I have some business cards over here for the city, and then my employment as well as a consultant. If you need anything, you feel free to grab one. Any questions? Tom?
So one thing you mentioned, which I thought a lot about, you talked about how some of the most affordable homes in the city often happen to be in the urban core, and they happen to be historic.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, though they may be affordable homes to buy,
Yeah.
not necessarily affordable homes to
Yes.
maintain.
Yes.
So I thought a lot about that because, it is true that you can find, relatively affordable homes, but they need so much work.
Yeah.
And it's just not viable or feasible to think that most low-income homeowners are going to be able to do that kind of work. And I know there's certain help that, a lot of the neighborhoods recently, including East Central where I live, and the Minnetrista neighborhood too, have done these micro grants using the ARP funds. I don't know, maybe Old West End has done that. But that has been helpful to
Yeah.
folks that need some extra money to do some of that work. But some of these old homes just need so much work. It's
That's right.
to really think about.
And just because you can afford the rent or the mortgage doesn't mean you can afford all the upkeep, like you're saying. And so then these historic properties start to fail more over time because the really expensive roof wasn't patched correctly, or it's so drafty because the windows are 200 years old and you can't afford to fix them, that you're spending so much on utilities just to heat the house. Or my mom was in a house that was historic, and she would just shut off like 2/3 of the house during the winter and not even try because it was just too much. So yeah, it's a real thing, definitely. Go ahead.
Continuing on that thought, as the improvements are made to these properties and the property value goes up, then you are taxing your
Yeah.
property owners out of their own properties. So these are some of the things that also need to be addressed with your property
Yeah.
taxes as the value of the home goes up. We need to protect our homeowners, not use it against them as they make
Yeah.
improvements.
Yeah, and that needs to be part of that larger discussion. Because obviously the city of Muncie needs more revenue. It can do a lot more with more revenue, but we can't do it at the expense of. We just can't. So we have to be smart about that.
I'm gonna share with you
Okay.
real quick. I was born and raised in Muncie, in the streets, lived in it all my life. I could have moved out north in those yellow areas, but I love my community. Years ago, you had all these factories. You had the main factories, you had the even smaller factories that catered to the bigger factories.
Yeah.
Everyone had a job. Muncie was almost 100,000 strong once upon a time. They had all
or they're built on the outskirts of town, and it's hard for people in my neighborhood that don't have transportation, steady transportation, to get out there to work in those jobs if they had a job there.
Well, there was a lot of carpooling back in the
Sure.
70s, I remember. But I just know they had those jobs and they maintained their properties. They took pride in those houses. And they still want that
Yeah.
property, but they don't have that money due
Yeah.
to they don't have those jobs and they don't have that pay base.
Yeah, it's true. Neil, did you have a comment? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna ask you your opinion on, so whatever's happening in the conversation in Muncie, Delaware County related to, a high poverty rate, which I don't know what kind of conversation is even happening related to that. What is I feel like sometimes what I hear is these sort of economic development approaches that when they play out for a couple of years, those don't seem to be like, have anything to do with economic development. It's not like changing the sort of experience or narrative from I don't know, maybe it's a historic preservation perspective or a professional perspective. What do you think is an approach for a city, a county in addressing high rates of poverty? Like where do you start, or what's a new approach, or what's a different sort of way of looking at this that could help to make some movement or some change in a positive direction?
So I was talking to Nate before this and said that one of the things I've seen already is that everything's very compartmentalized within the city. And so we need to break down those bureaucratic walls of this department works here, because really that department works the whole city. It involves every single issue. And so we need to have discussions with all the departments, economic development, rehabilitation, redevelopment, with community development, with everything that's on there, to start having a where do we start kind of conversation of how do we address this. The reality probably will be that we have to invest high economic investments to try to get business and manufacturing and money flowing in. But then are we designating a portion of that does come into these areas that we need to address? Because they're not going to generate revenue like these other things are. And so we have to look where money's coming in and how as a city are we talking about the issues, and then how are we actually putting money towards those issues as well. And I have not been part of those conversations, but that's not necessarily part of my purview either. Although, as you see, historic preservation and poverty really correlate. Because the best form of preservation is just using a property. And so I love what the land bank does, where they repurpose a building. It's no longer going to be a house, because no one wants it for a house. And so they repurpose it for whatever it is that's going to happen, that someone is going to come in and use it, offices or whatever. Or it is for a different type of family or whatever it's going to come in. And using a building, because once it's sitting, it's likely to deteriorate. But these larger issues, I think everyone can have a seat at the table, and that table needs to be pretty big, and we need to have a conversation pretty soon about what are the key problems and how are we going to start, because the problem's too overwhelming. 30% under poverty. I can't fix that. And today we're not going to fix that, but we can start talking about it and come up with some items to be actionable. I think you had a question.
Yeah. I was just going to go off of what she said earlier. This isn't just affecting the homeowner that's, put their life into purchasing this property and maintaining it and having that pride. This is something that is affecting generations. You've got
Yeah.
this wealth that is no longer in the family, and now you just set up the rest of the generations for generational poverty.
Yeah.
So it's going to continue unless it's stopped.
Yeah. You had a question?
Oh, I was gonna get on my soapbox.
Oh.
Is that all right? I'm the chair of the urban planning department, and I started here 9 years ago, and one is focused on the city full-time.
Yeah.
Right? I'm the chair of the urban planning department, I helped to start the land bank, I get to spend 10 hours a week on that. Right? You can't volunteer and
Yeah.
part-time your way out of the problem of lack of coordination,
Yeah.
lack of information, and frankly, lack of expertise. One of the things that's really shocking to me is we have like 4 or 5 different economic development entities in Muncie and Delaware County, East Central Indiana. Not a single one of them has a person on their staff with a degree in planning and economic development. I mean, people get their PhD in economic development. They know about how to invest money in a place based on what's in that place in order to get the best economic return.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't have anyone who's we have a lot of people who care a lot, who want to do a good job. But I just don't think we pay public workers
Yeah.
enough. So the other thing that I will say, and this is the end of my soapbox, in 2011, when the state tax cap occurred, the city of Muncie lost 42% of its municipal revenue. From 2010 to 2011, you have 58% of your budget from last year to work with for next year. What do we do about that?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get a successful coordinated effort to deal with stuff unless you have intelligent, caring, full-time people to do that work.
Yeah.
Soapbox.
Yeah. I think that's the reality of it. There is a little bit of good news in that I think we have the people and resources that we could do it here in our community. It's just we haven't done a good job of coordinating and putting that together and getting the right people in the right positions.
Well, we could sort of propose the reallocation of funding to make that sort of thing happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of money we spend on certain areas of government is very high, and then, law enforcement, for example, but then to address these sort of deeper issues, which all contribute, it ultimately would contribute to our community safety issues.
Yeah.
If we invested money into communities too.
Yeah.
So how do we, I mean, I guess those are all just political sort of.
Well, and I think that the city council is the only way to really address where funding and spending occur.
The mayor's office has a discretionary vehicle
Yes.
for spending
That's true. They do.
income tax money, and that is the redevelopment commission. So the council's budget is relatively fixed because of the property tax cap. Like if you want to get more money from the city council, that means they have to take money away from somewhere else. But the redevelopment commission, they don't have legacy obligations from year. They have some, but they have a lot more flexibility. So if
That's
you're
true.
looking for like where, and they make those decisions all the time. Like every redevelopment commission meeting, they're deciding how do we allocate this and that. It's quite different. But I don't think that the redevelopment commission has enough money to like address systemic poverty issues
Right.
or hire 10 staff that we need to do, effective planning.
Yeah. But I would say a plan is better than none. And starting with a plan would be a good way to then start with what is it we should focus on with what we have and in the time we have to begin that.
Are you aware that there's a plan called Together DM?
Say again?
Are you aware that there's a plan that was generated in 2021 called Together DM that's
I don't think I've heard of that.
okay, yeah. It's
Good.
kind of like out there.
Okay.
It's in the Plan Commission's office.
Okay.
And there's like a nonprofit that's trying to do some implementation stuff. But
Yeah.
again, there's no permanent,
Sure.
staff function.
Well, yeah, I'll look for that. When I say that.
One kind of unhelpful soapbox type comment and then a question. One is that I feel like part of the narrative maybe that needs to change or could change is that, the history of Muncie is that we had industry come in and grew up big business, big projects to come in and kind of save us. And not, if that comes, that's great, but I think there's an opportunity to do kind of more incremental, kind of smaller, bottom-up
Yes.
work that's less sexy and less kind of, salvation-like, but over time it starts to change the city. And I feel
Yes.
like another thing is that you have in Muncie, and I don't know what the answer is, but you have this legacy of people that were, used their hands, had skills, working class folks. That's the other story, obviously, about that poverty line.
Yes.
Where industry was and now it's no longer.
Yeah.
That's still a huge resource that you don't hear anybody talking about how to tap into. Again, I have some ideas. I think there's some models, some cities like Cleveland where they have, they identify anchor institutions. You got Ball State, you got the hospital, and you build smaller kind of industries that feed into those. Because those are anchor institutions that are not going to leave. But that's the risk of when you say we need somebody to come in, but they come in and then they move on. And that's the economic system that we're all part of. But so changing that conversation to be about what's here, what's possible, albeit small, I feel like it's part of what needs to be talked about. The other thing, the question I had was, have you seen examples of land banks working with historic preservation efforts in other places in the state, or most likely out of the state, because there's a lot of land banks in Indiana.
Yeah, because you're one
Do
of.
you have any ideas about? I'm thinking about the tax sale.
Yeah.
And how many of those properties in the Old West End have been churning the tax sale for years and years and years. And we make the argument that give those to us. We'll try to do something productive rather than just slowly have the economic value extracted out of them and then they need to be demolished.
Yeah.
But there might be an opportunity with the historic preservation kind of lens.
Yeah. So as you know, land banks in Indiana, there are very few. In fact, we're well ahead of almost every municipality in Indiana with having a land bank. So, that's a great benefit to our city to have that in our county. So, one of the things that I've seen and can happen is because you have a lot of outside of the community, sometimes many states away, speculative investing, as soon as a house goes up for sale, a property goes up for sale, and a lot of them are in historic districts. They look cool by Google Street View. Oh yeah, I think I could do something with it, and then they don't. Or they'll just be rentals, and there won't be the care for the property. They'll just be, like you said, taking the economic value out of it. And then within months, it's back in a tax sale or whatever, for whatever reason, and it just deteriorates further. So a land bank and a city working with a land bank to be intentional to preserve its historic properties can be a great collaboration. Not just to take a historic property to keep it away from other businesses, because that kind of or other entrepreneurial investment, that kind of leaves a little bad taste with that freedom of making your own money and property and all that. But being intentional that the history of these places belongs to the city, to the people, that if we are going to value that, then we should have a concerted effort to try to preserve and rehabilitate. And so the land bank can be a great tool of, this property is of such importance that it should not just be generally thrown out there for someone to maybe or maybe not develop. That it's in a state, it's in such a risk, we need it rehabilitated and we need it back out there. And it's preserved for the community and hopefully contributing to the community, not just with its history, but also property taxes and values. So the land bank, it can be an amazing partner. You, of course, have an uphill challenge teaching something that's fairly new to Indiana, although you've been here for a while and they see some value. But I was at the last meeting and that was called into question. What value have we gotten when we've given you? Well, historic preservation is a matter of time. It isn't just a, you did this one thing and now it's all better. And all these questions, it's not a one-time thing. It's going to take time to address. But yeah, I think Land Bank can be an amazing partner. I don't know how much longer you want to go.
We can stop right there unless there's any last comments or questions.
I have a question, I guess, thinking about Old West End, I don't know tons about those properties, but I spend a lot of time over there with people, and, there are multiple abandoned properties, very large houses that are over there, that, like, I know they're working on one that's on the corner of, maybe it's on Howard and Council, is that right? But right across the street from there is another house, like humongous house that's just completely gutted and sitting there. I don't know anything about
That
who
yellow
owns that
one?
The yellow one, yeah. I don't know who owns that property. I don't know, like, but what are the vehicles or mechanisms for sort of acquiring those properties and getting them into the land bank? Even if, if it's a private owner, that would be very difficult to do that, I understand. But is there a way of buying people out? Whoever has that is obviously not doing anything with it. So what are vehicles for getting, I'm sure that could be a historic landmark.
Yeah.
So how is a property like that acquired by a land bank, by
So one of the things that I'm working with the building commissioner on is identifying these properties that are going to go up for sale or even potentially considering being demolished because it's starting to have some issues structurally. And so he and I are going to coordinate early on before we have to even discuss that it's now ready to be demolished, or it's going to go to foreclosure or whatever, so that if possible, if we can line up people that are interested, that we can work with them to get this into the hands of somebody that's going to do something with it productive in a way that's going to preserve the history and help. So I'll be part of that, and so then I need partners that are interested that I can go to and say, hey, would you be interested in this? I think we can work this out. However that process happens, but at least we would know there's somebody interested in it. Let's pursue that instead of demolition in the next month.
From the land bank's perspective, we bought some properties. I own 500 West Howard.
You did
We
buy
bought, had been the tax sale, some guy bought it, and had been sitting on it for a couple of years, we bought it. There's another 5 or 6 we bought, something like that. And then, we did get awarded by the commissioners 24 properties in that area. That's the way the land bank should, through the tax foreclosure process, we should be getting those properties. There's also a model that John probably knows more about than I do, that we need to start thinking about. It's called receivership, where it doesn't have to go to the tax sale. We can actually basically go before a judge or some kind of city authority, and because it's deemed a danger to the neighborhood or something like that, they can appoint the receiver. But there are other avenues to acquire properties that that could be historic or they're important for a neighborhood,
Yeah.
and they're being neglected, but somehow don't enter the tax sale or
I do have a quick
Mhm.
question.
Sure.
Properties where the owner has passed away years ago,
Mhm.
sometimes it's in the tax sale, sometimes not. And sometimes it's just all boarded up, and sometimes there's various people that live there, just whatever. So how does that work, where somebody's passed away years ago, but nobody in the family has taken that and put their name on it, that they
Go ahead, Nate.
I was just say, we just got a call this last week from a guy who has a property in Whiteley, close to the river, and he wants to get rid of it. But it was his parents, they passed away, it was passed on to his 3 brothers. Those 2 brothers, 2 of those brothers passed away, and they got 4 kids that are all over the country. So we've got to find those 4 kids to sign and him to sign, and then we can
Sure.
Because I mean, just like you said, it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
This one,
That's
and
another.
goes on and on to the tax sale.
Their properties.
All right.
It's not just tax sale issues, you got people, building commissioner, they're actually tagging properties, and you get only 3 strikes, and after that 3rd strike is non-compliance, and then when it turns into non-compliance, it almost gives leverage to the city to take your property, especially if they commit demolition or do a demolition to the property. And that's where land bankers need to come in and help save that property for the people, because a lot of times the people just don't have the money to fix it up.
So you said 3 times it could be in the tax sale?
Not tax sale, 3 times it can be in non-compliance by the city.
Oh, like
Meaning the
grass
city is
or-
tagging properties for them not being fixed up, and they're also tagging you when it's vacant. They're also tagging you when the property is vacant, and, if you didn't register that property every year by May such day, it's $100 penalty. But remember, these are properties that people own that just don't have the money, period, and you're tagging them $100 as it is. Yeah. I think you know all too well. Yeah, because I worked with him up there before. Yeah, they're tagging you for that, and each property, if you don't pay it, it's $100. So you have to pay that to register your vacant property. And if you don't, that also is a lien, possible lien. There's more liens than it is on top of the property tax itself.
Just, before we close there,
Yeah.
just one, I think the opportunity for the land bank with that process is to focus on folks, non-local owners that don't register with the registry, that aren't compliant, that get cited for UVHA hearing. There's got to be a way for some entity, and I think it's the land bank, to be able to step in and say, we'll acquire this property, we'll secure it, we'll clean it up as best we can, see if there's something that we can do with it that's productive for Muncie. But I think the opportunity, and again, like James said, there's been a decrease in home ownership.
Yeah.
There's also been a huge decrease in local ownership
Yes.
in Muncie over the last 15, 20 years. So, and I feel, not across the board, but generally I feel pretty good about trying to be an entity that works to create more local ownership.
Yeah.
Going after, the famous case EXH, Ruby's writing a story. We're gonna publish it somewhere, hopefully in the Star Press. It's a story you guys have probably heard, but this guy from Connecticut acquired 150 properties for less than $20,000, and has done nothing with those. Caused all kinds of problems for the neighbors, not mowing them, they've been tagged. About 50 of those have gone tax delinquent. We're right now trying to acquire some of those through the tax foreclosure process. But he took the 100 that he still had and passed those off to a nonprofit that he created called the First Muncie Land Trust. So now he's not obligated to pay taxes. And he's just going to sit on them until whatever. But there's a real problem. I'm going to say it over and over again. There's a real problem with us giving away properties at cents on the dollar to folks that have zero ties to the community. For me, again, it's kind of romantic, but the people that own property in Muncie, I feel like if it goes well in Muncie, they benefit. If it goes poorly in Muncie, they help carry the burden. And we have a big disconnect there. There are people that have no connection to money that are benefiting, and irregardless of whether Muncie's ever happened. I think that's the recipe for exploitation. That's what we got.
Well, I'll go ahead and end this formally and say, I hope I answered some of your questions, and I hope I gave you a few new ones. If you would like to continue a conversation with me in the future, make sure you get my contact information. Thank you for your time.